Hi guys, it's me Greg, thanks for joining me. I am here at Glastonbury Abbey today, and the reason I'm here is because I want to speak to you about ghosts and hauntings and mediums. And I thought what better place to kind of do a video like this than at Glastonbury Abbey, which is hundreds and hundreds of years old, which has apparently has King Arthur buried here. So I think it's a really good setting. So while I'm speaking, if you do see any kind of ghosts walking around in the background, you'll know I've picked the right place. Okay, so this is a topic that's kind of interesting to me at the moment because the last couple of nights I've had a lot of visitations at night in my dreams, people I know, people I don't know. So the veil at the moment for me personally is very thin and I'm making a lot of contact. And the other reason, or the other thing that put me in that mindset this morning was when I got up there was real mist. The mists of Avalon again hovering over the kind of Somerset levels here, and it just kind of put me in that mindset of the mysterious, the other side, people coming through. So this is something that's really interesting to me, and the first experience I had with ghosts was when I was really young, really young, and I was still in the crib, and over my crib there was a picture of a zebra. And the picture was from Africa. My parents had bought that years before, I think from Kenya or Tanzania or something, and they'd hung it over my crib. And that picture was actually, to me personally, a doorway to the other side. It opened the veil, it opened the door and allowed things to come through. Now, you could say, and you could argue that the picture had an imprint, which means that it had witnessed things, so to speak, and the personality of certain people had become implanted on it. You could also say it was haunted, that people's souls had become connected with it and they'd taken up residence. But personally, I feel that it was a doorway. There was something about that picture which just made contact really easy. And I used to sit in my crib, and I don't know how old I am, I'm like, what, 2 or 3 or something? So you don't really, you have no idea of what's going on. And these people would come through, like, there were nice people, but the instance that I really remember was that there were 3 women who came through in particular, and it was very kind of Shakespearean, with the witches around the cauldron almost. And they were not very benevolent entities, they weren't very benevolent influences. So what I did is, I think in terms of my consciousness, I shut that down deliberately because it frightened me. I didn't particularly enjoy it. So I stopped that part of myself, I closed it off. I consciously kind of said, I don't want to connect with people on the other side. And I think for a lot of you watching this, you'll have done the same thing. It's something, especially as a child, you do to safeguard yourself, okay? So if you're interested in making contact, just make sure that you kind of say that to yourself, or you make some vow to the universe that I will no longer shut this off. I'm interested in opening up this ability and I do want to make contact. Okay, so that was my first kind of experience. So I don't actively seek out spirits or ghosts to work with, and I don't actively try and make contact with the other side, but once in a while things have come through. The next kind of thing that did come through was when I was about 10 or maybe 11 or something. And we were on a holiday in Namibia, in Swakopmund, which is this place by the coast, the skeleton coast of Namibia, which is kind of daunting in itself. And we were at this hotel, and that was really haunted. There were children and women again in particular. It might be that I pick up very easily on the kind of spiritual energy of women, I'm not sure, but the way it came through this time was I was sitting on the stairs of the hotel, and these children just kind of ran past me and the women were chasing after them. And it could be that it's interesting how it came across, because it was like, I see things like that. I'm not clairvoyant, so to speak. I feel things more and I just know them. So I would say I'm clairsentient and claircognizant. But when these kind of when I noticed these entities, it was just a like a picture in my mind. And films do this quite well, I think, or that's the way my brain signals that there's something. It's kind of that dream effect, and I just saw the children, I saw the women in kind of a hazy, kind of slow motion kind of snapshot in my mind, and I also heard the laughter of the children. And that didn't particularly freak me out. That was non-threatening. So I don't think it's the actual making contact itself that's so scary. It's, I think, the nature of the... sorry, a leaf just hit the camera. It might be a message. Yeah, it's the actual nature of the entities making contact that's the important thing. I've had certain moments in readings when people have come through, and the most significant one of those was when I was doing a reading for a lady in Manchester in person, and she was asking, she literally asked me, I think she must have thought I was a medium, and she said, "Who's coming through for me? Who do you see coming through?" And I was just about to tell her that, you know, that's not how I work. I focus more on the concrete, on the here and now, and that I'm not a medium. But before I could even speak the words, her uncle came in so loud and clear, and I saw him completely. And he had brown hair, he had a gold chain around his neck, he had like a mustache, he was dressed in kind of a corduroy suit, and I was just like, oh my goodness. And he just kind of gave me this feeling, this kind of message for her that things were going to be okay for her in regard to her relationships. And I just kind of ventured and I said, you know, I don't usually work this way, but I do have a kind of strong message here from a man who seems like your uncle. And I gave her the description, and she was like, oh wow, that's exactly him. And she was asking about a relationship, which came out later, so that was great. But again, what made me question that, and what also makes me reluctant to open up to that kind of side of things, is what does, you know, her uncle was a human being, he had an ego, he had certain desires for his niece. How can I trust what he's saying? How can I trust that he knows what's going to be okay? And that's kind of a questionable thing for me when I think about doing mediumship or working with these kind of energies, because they're all just people and they've passed on, and just because they've passed on, I don't imagine that there's some enlightened creatures and that they suddenly have all the answers. So I'd much rather work with people's guides and angels and kind of higher forces that I know are good, rather than just letting anybody in. So I think that's partly why I don't particularly go down that route explicitly or deliberately. So that was interesting, that reading. And I've also been to things like ghost tours, you know. Like I went to, I'm just a bit concerned about the wind here, I'm not sure how that's going to work. I've been to ghost tours, and those are just fun, and I think people take those really seriously. I've never really seen anything at any of those ghost tours, like proper hauntings. Like, I've seen glasses move around, but I think it's the people doing it. So I think those are good for entertainment value, but I wouldn't put too much importance on those kind of things. So yeah, the other thing that I did was I went to see a medium where I used to live up in the north, and he was doing kind of psychic development lessons, and that was quite a few years ago. And we worked on chakras and intuitive ability and all of that stuff. And what I really was interested in was the medium side of thing, because at that point I didn't realize that I deliberately kind of closed it down, and that I deliberately wasn't kind of opening up to that side of things. And one of the tools, again, this might be useful for you if you want to make contact, the useful, and it's interesting that I'm sitting on a park bench right now, but one of the tools he mentioned was, you sit down, if you want to make contact, if you want to see who's coming through, in your mind's eye you imagine yourself going to a park like this one, sitting on a bench, on one side of the bench and seeing who comes in and who sits down on the bench with you. And it's as simple as that. And then you just look at who's coming through, what are the messages they've got for you. And that's a very kind of simple way to access that kind of energy. So that's something for you to practice if you're interested in that sort of thing. But also what I find interesting in readings in particular, I'm a very practical person. So I use my intuition. And I use it through the tools like astrology, like the tarot. I look at the tools, what the tools have to say to you, what they have to offer, to impart. And then my intuition gives me answers on those kind of practical queries. And that's what I'm most comfortable with. That's what I like to work with. Focusing on the real world, and if you have practical questions, love, relationship, life purpose, career, that's the kind of stuff I'm interested in. I'm interested in the real world, and I think most people want to see how they can make their lives better, and that's really my area of focus and interest. And I had an experience, I was on a radio show with a medium, and we were kind of working in tandem, and again, it really put me off because we'd get these callers come in, and they'd ask certain questions, and I was going first, and I'd give them these practical things, and this guy afterwards, he'd come in and he said, I'm getting an older woman, and I'm getting the smell of lavender. And it was very kind of, it grated really with the practicality of what I was trying to do, and with the kind of impressions that he was getting to kind of prove to the people that there was life on the other side, that there were people coming through. And it's a totally different approach, and I think for me personally it's important not to mix them up, and that's how I'm most comfortable. Maybe in future I'll include them, but it's not something that works for me at the moment. So I think if you do go to mediums, a lot of them are interested in proving that there's life on the other side. There's a whole movement here in the UK which is called the Spiritualist Church, and they are interested in proving to the general public that there's life on the other side. And paranormal investigators and people who do the electro recordings and stuff, they're all interested in proving it. Personally, I'm not interested in proving anything, so that doesn't appeal to me. And I think the other thing is to provide people with comfort, to say, yes, I do have your mother here, and she wants to say that she loves you and those kind of things. That I find that really, really helpful. And if that's what you're after, then I think going to a really good medium to get that is something that's great. Again, the thing that puts me off from that is it's so unpredictable. You never know who's going to come through, and you never know who you're going to get. So with that example of the girl's uncle, I just opened up and he just came through. It's not like I deliberately said, okay, let's contact your uncle. So it's not very predictable. And what I like about my work is that I can focus on concrete things, and that I can actually do what I say I'm going to do and not be kind of beholden into who's in the mood to talk on the other side and who isn't. So that's my kind of personal take on it. So again, that's my kind of 2 cents worth on the on ghosts and hauntings and mediums. And I think just before I finish, I just want to, ghosts are leftover energies or leftover spirits that haven't moved on yet. And sometimes, like I said earlier, sometimes it's an imprint, something so drastic happens that the energy is still there. So I think it's just an energy residue, and sometimes it's an actual person. The difference between a spirit and a ghost, I would say a spirit is someone's soul, a ghost is the physical manifestation of a soul, or it is an imprint. That's the difference, really. So ghost on this level, spirit in spiritual truth. And that's what hauntings are as well. So that's it. I hope that has given you maybe a different perspective on it. I'm going to turn this off now. I'm going to check the video and see if the wind has ruined this. I hope it hasn't. But yeah, leave me your thoughts and your experiences with hauntings and ghosts and things like that, and the way, if you do get readings, who you go to. Do you go to psychics? Do you go to mediums? Do you go to astrologers? Do you go to all 3 at different times when you need it? be interested to hear your feedback on that. So have a wonderful weekend, and I will speak to you soon.